I was tempted to, because I didn't stream today, when I finished all the stuff I did, I was tempted to start watching the next movie, but I usually save that until we're done recording, but I was tempted.
I mean, I got mine from the library. It's here, so I'll probably put it on as soon as I can.
Yeah, this is probably because I'm a terrible human being, but when we get done recording, I'm usually so hyped up I can't just go to bed. So I put on the next movie, and that's my first viewing.
Well, there you go. That's a good way to keep it going.
Yeah, this week I only watched the movie twice. I didn't have to watch it 3 times, but yeah.
I mean, diving right in without too unfortunate era inappropriate scenes, it was a little more delightful than the rest of the other two we've watched.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
I agree. So let's dive right in. Welcome to the Potato Chip Pictures podcast. My name is B. Sammy Davis.
And I'm Justin.
He's Justin. I'm Sammy.
Again.
Yeah. And this week, we watched Goldfinger, the third movie in the 007 franchise. If you've made it this far without knowing that we are reviewing the 007 franchise. How'd you do that?
What, 56 different films or such?
Oh man! I mean, one day we're looking at
1% of the way.
we only have to do 27 movies total.
27.
This, of course, was the 7th book in the Bond franchise from Ian Fleming.
Of course.
We're jumping all over the place. And truth be told, the very first book, its movie adaptation is done by a completely different studio. So we won't
What's
get
the first book?
The first book is Casino Royale.
Oh, okay.
And someone else made a version of that movie in 1967 to compete with the 1967 Bond movie that was releasing. And they had purchased the rights to Casino Royale. They had the rights to use Bond as a name and all that stuff. So Eon Pictures didn't touch the first book until 2006. So it's just kind of crazy.
In 2006? Man.
Yeah. This is a long
That'll be interesting franchise. To get there.
Yes,
I'm just like, I don't know that I had known that, but yeah, we'll get to that one.
Yeah, and jumping ahead, 2006 is considered the reboot. More so than any other time that they changed the Bond actor. In 2006, they kind of decided, let's just reboot the whole thing. You know, we're not held to any of the previous movies or styles. This is going to be new Bond starting here. So, Cool for them. A little bit of history about, well, I shouldn't say the word history because I did not do any research on actual history. This has a budget of $3 million, so we have gone up by $1 more million. First movie was 1, second movie was 2, third movie is 3 million. The pattern doesn't last. But the return on this one was just under $125 million at that time. Adjusted for inflation, this would be like a $29 million movie returning $1.2 billion.
Oof.
Yeah, so it did pretty well.
That's crazy.
And I had to look it up. I just had to look it up. This is among the top rated Bond movies. This is so many critics will say this is the one. This is where they say the Bond franchise starts. And I
Yeah.
agree. Like the
Yeah.
first half of the movie is brilliant. If we were to cut this movie right down the middle, the first half I love. I would have given the movie an 8 if it had maintained what it was doing at the beginning. And then we'll get there when we talk about the review, but I'm just saying now, once we meet Pussy Galore up until the end with a very fun climax, I'm just not into
Sure.
it. It's a bad movie on the back half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll have to think through the scenes as we talk about them because like, I mean, I'm trying to remember the intro and all of my feelings I had about it because it's like the second one and that stuff is projected onto women's bodies, but instead of just words, it's scenes from the movie which include like explosions and guns and things like this. And it's like, what was the director like going for overall?
You know,
Like, is this time period like?
I gotta be honest, I love it. I genuinely love it. Yes, it's very similar to From Russia with Love, but in terms of the overall direction, the words are clear and easy to read because those are animated through the editing, and it's pictures that are projected. Some of them work really well. When they project Odd Job onto the model's face, that does not work at all. Like they try to line it up perfectly, and it just doesn't work. They use the wrong shot. They use the wrong angle, but it's still an interesting effect, and so I was into it. But my one criticism is that it's like, all right, so are we just going to do this over and over again? Like now we're going to start projecting the movie or scenes or words or something onto the female form. Like have they hit a rhythm that they just want to maintain? And I know they won't. But I could
I
see.
don't know that.
Yeah.
Like, that's an interesting start. I mean, it doesn't help that he's immediately dismissive of the first woman that he's ostensibly enjoying some time by the pool with. Like, I don't actually know who this woman.
We have jumped over the actual introduction because, like the first movie, this movie starts with a little mini adventure, but better than the last movie. This really is a micro mission. We're going to watch infiltration. We're going to watch the job being done. He's going to get information about the flight for the next scene, but then we still get the sexiness and the action, and all this stuff is really hyper condensed into this intro. And it worked for me. It worked a lot.
I think it's a nice, like, whiz, bang, kaboom. I will say that a singular duck, what do you call it, like a duck blind snorkel is dumber than if that were a real thing. Like, God. So.
And there are
it was
weird,
a little bit like,
especially with
weird.
That, like when he's taking off the breathing apparatus that has the bird on the top of it, they speed up the photography so it looks like he does it really fast, but it looks aggressive, like he's really mad at this bird.
I wonder if it was very awkward for him as well. Maybe we'll see.
And then like when he scales the wall, and this did make me laugh really hard. This hook comes in and attaches itself to the wall. It's got a rope on it, and a guard sees it, and he walks up and he contemplates. He's just like, I don't know if that hook and rope are supposed to be there, because there's all the time in the world for Bond to jump on him. The trope of video game guards being stupid, I think, comes from this guard alone.
I think it was a nice condensed scene, like you were saying. I think that I liked the little bit of quick thinking that Bond has, tossing the heat lamp into the tub where the other guy fell. It's like, oh, I mean, improvisation, and did a good, finished his mission. It is kind of like, you should probably also act surprised by the explosion like everyone else if you don't want to give it away.
He's not a great spot.
Yeah, no. Oh, what was that?
Yeah, I'll just keep going into the bar that everyone's running out of.
Yeah.
So this movie has 4 Bond girls, and our first one is in this intro scene. She's this intense dancer in the bar.
Oh, yeah.
She makes really hard eye contact with the camera, or, Bond. And,
Yeah.
And then she sneaks off to his hotel room, and we get this really interesting shot where she opens her eyes while they're kissing, because that's what people do in the 60s.
Yeah.
And Bond's able to see the reflection of the guy coming in through her eyeball. And that's one of those memes. This movie is full of Bond memes, and I will give it that. Like, so many things that people just think about when they think about Bond come from this movie.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, thrusting the heat lamp into the bathtub, that's a fantastic kill. As far as Bond kills go, that's one of those where you're like, yes, old action movies, murder most foul, and I love it.
Yeah, it was a nice little, memorable one that will stick around. I do enjoy a lot of the pieces, like you're saying, probably the memes that I haven't seen of it, because a lot of this, I'd say that I didn't know much of it except for the really iconic parts, but we'll get to those.
Yeah. We don't want to make this all just quoting the most iconic line over and over and over again. It's killing me. I want to say it. I bet it's killing you. You want to say it. But then we get into those credits that we've already talked about, but I did want to mention we finally get a pop song that sings the title right there with the credits. Like, that is quintessential Bond, and we finally get it all together in movie number 3.
I'd say that it's something that they probably were happy that they found, because it's, I don't know how much more the pattern continues if it's all of them, because I know that the 2021 or 2020s-ish era, they have their music, they have their songs, and
I think all of them
curious.
are written for the movie. In this case, it was the lead composer. He wrote the song and recorded a demo version for the filmmakers. That version exists out there, but it is not as good as the orchestrated version that went into the movie with Shirley Bassey singing, and it's a dope song. It's not in my liked songs on Spotify. Like, I'm not going to listen to it, but when it comes on, it stays in my head. Like, I've been humming Goldfinger all day today. It's fun. It's a fun song. But really, the whole reason for that opening scene is to be told that the plane that Bond is going to take out of Central America is going to take him to Miami. And that's where we get to finally meet our... the first person we meet here is Felix. And you may not remember him because they recast him, but that is the same Felix from Dr. No, just a new actor.
Right. I think I thought I heard the name in the second one, but I don't think he was on screen.
Yeah, exactly. I think they said his name once. Like, they said, my buddy Felix in America, or Felix from the CIA. But he doesn't appear in the movie. And in this one, he returns, and just like his Dr. No counterpart, he's useless.
He could help later on, but I think I did enjoy that later on, but I guess we'll talk about that when we get to Bond's reputation and Felix's assumptions. Yeah. I think that is a nice nice quote unquote character flaw for Bond. So
it is, and I will say the uselessness of Felix in this movie really speaks to the character of Bond more than it did in Dr. No, where Dr. No, that Felix, it just feels like he doesn't want to be a part of the action. Like he just bugs off whenever things are getting hot. But this Felix, he's like, all right, this is James Bond's show. I'm just here for backup. We know his reputation. I'm not going to cramp his style. I kind of love that they really don't kind of push on the CIA element, and he looks more like a grizzled detective for this movie. Yeah. Like
that might have been kind of what they dress like, but that also, it just looks like a government man that's not wearing a black suit. If I remember right.
Yeah, if it's a black suit, it's like the closest thing to a casual black suit that you can get. Like he is not dressed to the nines like Bond is. But we're in a swanky hotel. Felix reveals that Bond is actually on mission. There's this guy named Goldfinger. He's also staying at the hotel. And all they want Bond to do is just watch him. Just watch him. Don't do anything. Watch him and report. That's it. And Bond can't do that because he's a bad spy.
I'm recalling. Keep an eye on him. Oh, yeah. Playing gin.
Yep. He's got an opponent that he is always beating, and so Bond decides he's got to get involved, and he goes up to Goldfinger's bedroom. There we see this staff woman just hanging out outside, and Bond just grabs her key and drags her and the key to the door. And she's like, "Hey, you're not allowed to do that. That's Goldfinger's room." It's like, lady,
she knows who it is.
Yeah, like you work here. You know he's not allowed to do it. And you're just going to bug off after this. Like, there's no repercussions from the hotel. Like, she's not going to call management. She's not going to do anything. That's above her pay grade, baby.
Yeah. Breaking into someone's room.
Yep. Can't be bothered. And inside the room, we get to meet our second Bond girl. This one gets a name. So the first one, we don't know anything about her. She just gets bonked on the head, and that's really it. Second girl, her name is Jill Masterson.
Jill.
And right. Bond is really concerned if she's sleeping with Goldfinger.
Very concerned.
And
she's just helping with gin.
Yeah, just helping him cheat. That's it. She doesn't sleep with the guy. And I only mention this because every time Bond meets someone, well, a woman connected to Goldfinger, and there are only two, he is really, really hung up on whether or not they're sleeping with Goldfinger. And I kind of get it. I mean, we haven't said it yet, but it's time to talk about Goldfinger. He's a big orange billionaire who loves gold.
Just loves it. He's I don't know that I read much about him, but it is different than Dr. No.
I mean, he is a classic Bond villain, and he's only become more popular with the rise of Donald Trump because there's another big orange guy with an obsession with gold.
I wonder what the age would have been this
Yeah,
was a
it
movie.
could not have been based on. I mean, maybe
Well, I mean,
the older
growing
Trump.
up, if it would have been in the purview of, I want to be like Goldfinger, and there he goes.
Yeah, yeah, it gets the wrong
I think I did read
message.
one. Yeah, I think I did read one person saying this was the Bond film where they're like, beforehand, I wanted to grow up and be like my dad, but after I watched this one, I wanted to grow up and be like Bond, and it's like, well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, this is a movie where the good guys and the bad guys are wrong, and I will confess, I was one of the people who got the wrong message from this movie. I saw Bond doing what Bond did, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. I guess I should say content warning 20 minutes into this thing. Later on, we're going to be talking about what I think I would define as sexual assault, maybe even rape. So
Yeah.
if that bugs you,
Yes.
just know that is coming up later on in this podcast. But yeah, Goldfinger is a very fascinating villain because he has nothing to do with Spectre. He's just a lone billionaire, well, I guess millionaire in this time, who just wants to be richer and richer, and we're gonna learn a few things. I don't want to jump too far ahead. We were meeting Jill Masterson. They together embarrass Goldfinger. And then he whisks her away to his bedroom where he can do his Bond magic on her.
I suppose. Man, it is so many like one-liners I want to say through this whole thing where it's like you would kind of say it sarcastically, I would think, nowadays, but it's like in blunt seriousness.
Oh yeah. And
he's like
hope
entirely satisfied. Like, okay, thanks for telling us.
I mean, it was tongue in cheek during the time period. They got a new director for this movie. The previous two were Terrence Young. The third movie was Guy Hamilton, and they specifically asked him because he could finish a movie quickly. And I think he also brought some of his own style and some of his own humor to it. And at the beginning, the humor is kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's one-liners. It's double entendres. But then in the back half of the movie, he decides, no one wants to watch a spy picture. Let's watch a comedy instead. And anyway, that's irrelevant.
Like.
we gotta talk about what happened to Jill Masterson because it's
I was trying to recall because it was like they talk, he leaves the room. I was expecting for her to be gilded by the time he got back because I felt like it was in my memory, it was some sort of like impossible moment of you left and then she came back and she was dead. Mm-hmm. Not just that, she's also turned to gold. But he gets chopped in the kitchen by very, I would say, is he only in this one? Because he is so much more recognizable than the other henchmen.
Yeah.
If he's only in one movie.
He's only in one movie.
Oh man.
He became one of the faces of the franchise for this one and only movie. And that, of course, we haven't heard his name yet, but yeah, Odd Job.
Oh yes.
We get to meet his left hand and his silhouette. And I love Odd Job. I'm an Odd Job stan. I'm with everybody else. Like, he's dope.
I think the lack of dialogue makes it work because you don't have to make the character any sillier than throwing your hat to, on one hand, like damage solid rock, but on the other hand, not actually like leave a mark if you don't want to.
Yeah. Well, and it is his magic hat, but we have the gimmicky henchman. He's
Yeah.
short, stout. He's got this wonderful smile that conveys every emotion. Like, God, I love Odd Job. And then that hat, that magical hat that can either cut stone or wire or just break a neck. Like, it's an amazing hat. I love Odd Job. And then, it was what, almost 30 years later in the 90s when GoldenEye came out and Odd Job was the cheapest character anyone could pick. Like,
oh, right, the game. I was
yeah.
The movie had him.
there is a movie. I always forget. GoldenEye to me was the Nintendo 64 game. We're even going to talk about the movie in this podcast, but I still associate it with the Nintendo 64 game.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's Odd Job who knocks him out. And if this were Cinema Sins, we would say this is a sin because Odd Job or Goldfinger didn't kill Bond there. We know that Goldfinger at least hears it from Odd Job, but more likely is there to see it himself. But he knows who Bond is from this moment on. Like, he will always know who Bond is, and Bond just always thinks like, no, I'm smarter than everyone. No one knows who I am. I'm a super spy. Like,
no, you're like, I can't remember on the radio if the Jin thing, if he does introduce himself, right? Like,
no, he introduces himself to the girl, and he does.
Oh, yeah.
This might be the very first time, because I don't remember hearing it in the other movies, but this might be the first time he says Bond. James Bond. Because I think in the previous ones, he has always just introduced himself as James Bond, and my friends call me James. Like, I cannot remember ever hearing him say Bond, James Bond before this moment. So it's a big moment for me because I remember it. But he doesn't introduce himself to Goldfinger on the radio. He only
tells
speaks.
Jill.
Yeah. And
okay.
You mentioned it. When we come back to Jill, she has been covered in gold paint, and this death is called skin suffocation. I think the Mythbusters did an episode all about skin suffocation.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure they proved it's not a real thing. It's bogus.
I mean, I thought that Jamie got an elevated temperature and they left it at that.
Okay, yeah, I think I remember that, but in my head I just remember thinking it was.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was busted or if it was confirmed,
or if it ended in the middle. And I'm willing to give it the middle. I had it in my head that it was busted, but maybe skin suffocation is a thing.
I mean, I feel like it wouldn't do you very much good to be entirely painted.
Yeah, but I also think molten gold would have been a much more visceral and terrifying look if he came back to a half-burned bed and the figure of a woman with gold like draping over her like cooled lava, like
yeah.
And I know that would kill her.
Yeah, I will say once we cut away from there and he's talking with M.
Yep.
It feels like I remember them saying him or the feeling was he's ready to take on Goldfinger because he killed this woman that I met for 5 minutes, slept with, and then left her alone to die.
You can't give this mission to anyone else. It's gotta be me, Chief.
Yeah, it was like, okay, that we have to do that in order for the movie to happen. So, okay. Feel like you could have just, watched Goldfinger and been like, yeah, let's take this guy down. Like, no, now we've made it personal.
Well, and the thing is, like, M starts the conversation by being like, you screwed up. You blew your cover. You got someone killed. Like, why should we give this mission to you? You are compromised. You're not good for this job. But like you said, he's like, no one's going to remember the name of Jill Masterson until 2025 when a couple of guys keep saying it over and over again on a podcast, unless I go after Goldfinger.
I was trying to place, who are you talking about? Okay.
Yeah, well, she's such a memorable Bond girl.
I didn't know her name, but her death was very memorable.
It is.
But like me, I'm sure that there's people that were like, don't know the mechanics of what was going on. Like, oh, he got knocked out, and that's why. It was like, no, it's like she died because she's made of gold. And like, that's about where I was. Sure, like, she died because she got turned to gold. I thought that was the villain's like power, like a Midas touch type thing, because that would be that would be scary.
In the song. Like the man with the Midas touch.
Oh, okay. See, that's where it's like the context that isn't there and got me thinking that. Where do we go from M? I don't think there's too much.
They take us
flirts
to
with
Q.
Penny.
Yes, he does flirt with Penny, and the notable thing about this is she does the magic trick of grabbing his hat and throwing it onto the coat rack.
Semi-notable, I guess.
Yeah, it's cute. It's a cute moment. That's really all it's good for. They do their standard flirting, and I will confess. In the previous two movies, I have always been like, Moneypenny, you ain't got it. Like, I've seen the girls that Bond is going after, and you ain't it. But this movie, she I don't know, they did her up better. They had better lighting. I was like, okay, I could see someone flirting with her now. Like, now she's not the homely secretary. She's a good-looking woman. So I will say, to this movie's credit, I finally believed the Moneypenny flirting. Finally.
I wonder when she disappears. Is she not? She's not. Oh no, they kind of have her in the new ones.
I think,
but
this
kind of not by the same name.
No, they have a Moneypenny in the new ones. It's a new actress. But I can't remember where she comes in. She wasn't in the first two Daniel Craig movies for sure. But I think we met her in Skyfall. Maybe Spectre.
Yeah, I think so.
But we're going to have this Moneypenny for a long, long time.
That'll be kind of cute. I'm excited.
It is. I remember her, from my childhood as being the older office lady who kind of inappropriately flirts, but you love to see her.
I'm like, inappropriately on the scale of 0 to Bond. Like, she's a nice like 5.
She's not the worst out there.
No, like she flirts. Well, I mean, I'm excited to see more of that same actress if she spans all of the other Bonds. That'll be funny.
Yeah, and I don't know how long she makes it, so I'm excited to go on that ride too. Because yeah, but it finally worked for me. But then we do get to meet Q. And I am vindicated from the last movie. I have been thinking about this all week, especially after editing the audio. I had said, that briefcase has all the gadgets, and we're going to see all the gadgets, because in later Bond movies, they're going to mention gadgets that aren't used or, something like that. And we finally got one. We got one with the Aston Martin DB5. So
not all of the gadgets are used.
And on top of that, they added a gadget that they don't talk about in this scene. So, the gadgets they talk about are the bulletproof front and rear windows.
Okay.
The revolving number plates. That's the very next thing they talk about. Then they talk about the two trackers, the large and the small tracker. They show the radar system in the DB5. That's related to the tracker, so we got to see it. They tell us about the smoke and oil and the machine guns on the left and right front thing, plus the ejector seat. So that's everything that Q tells us about this car and the tech that we're going to have. The one thing that he mentioned that we are never going to see in action is the revolving number plate.
Right.
It never happens.
Go through them. Never. I mean, maybe a deleted scene somewhere, but
maybe. I mean, so I did watch a behind the scenes, and the production designer said that someone on the production team, it was either the director or the props director, someone said they were sick of getting tickets in Europe and they just wish they could revolve to another license plate. And so they were like, oh, well, let's add that. And they in that behind the scenes, they reveal that there are two other gadgets in the car. There is a car phone in the driver's side door. So we never see that, never comes up. Might as well not exist for the movie. And then on the on the other side, so on the driver or the passenger, because we're in the UK, the passenger side rear light, that has the oil slick. The driver's side rear light has tacks. Again, never mentioned, never shown, doesn't exist for the movie.
Technically, yeah. I wonder if they'll see it in the next one then.
I don't know. I don't know if we'll ever see the DB5 again. It is an iconic car. I lied.
Sure.
I think in the 90s, Pierce Brosnan drives a DB5, and that was specifically to call back to this movie.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, there are some great things about this car. For the ejector seat, the production crew had to cut into the hardtop because Aston Martin wasn't going to make the car for them. And like they had to go back like 3 times to be like, are you sure? Is there an ejector seat? Like, are we really doing this once I cut into this car?
That's fun to know. But I mean, it's a big budget production, but yeah, it wasn't before this that they made that $1 billion. So
yeah, yeah, they were making a pretty big gamble.
I will say we smartly skipped over a pretty dry men talking scene with alcohol where Bond identifies it. I only like that scene because it feels like, I don't know, I can't say that I notice it in movies nowadays, but it just feels like here's some exposition. If it's a modern movie, you don't have to sit around and do exposition. You have phones, you have email. But like, I'm remembering I went to Nosferatu and they sit around and talk about what's happening. But then like once you split up, there's no communication. You're cut off, and so it's like it's a necessary in-era scene because like how else is Bond gonna know that this is Nazi gold that we're trying to bait him with?
That the British own Nazi gold. And you know they explain why they want to investigate Goldfinger. They think he's smuggling, and so they describe it as he goes to a country where gold is cheap, like the UK, and he'll buy a bunch of gold for maybe 10 pounds per gram or something like that. I don't remember the exact numbers they say. But then he'll go to a country where it's expensive, like Pakistan, and sell it for 100 pounds per gram. And when I heard that, I was like, so he's doing a capitalism? Like,
I was about to say, I feel like that part in Emperor's New Groove where he's like, and that's bad? Like, that's smuggling? Like, oh, okay.
I mean, we're going to find out that Goldfinger really is a bad guy, but from the British government's perspective, he's just a capitalist. He's just someone who has invested his money well.
Yeah, seems like.
And
Well, on to the golf game. I'm good with jumping off of the
yeah,
setup. I just like that part because it's like otherwise, like, you know, he could have gotten information in a faster way in nowadays. It's
yeah, and
just
he's got to
appropriate.
get the Nazi gold somehow. And I don't have a lot of troubles with that scene. I just think it's funny that our launching point for the investigation is he's a capitalist. We got to find him. And don't get me wrong, I would tell Bond to do the same. But I think if the movie were made today, I don't think Goldfinger would be caught, period. I think he would have gotten away with it if this were today's filmmaking. And we'll say what he's going to get away with much later because, like you said, we got to go play golf, my least favorite of all the sports.
Yeah, I'm sure that the significance of having a different ball is like something in the rules. So,
I mean, they explain all the important rules during the game, so I am glad that they are keeping me involved so I know what's happening. I just hate golf so much. I found myself just watching Odd Job for the entire golf sequence.
Well, I mean, Odd Job has a nice, what would you call it? A nice scene for himself where he gets commanded to throw his hat and chop off a statue's head, and it sails perfectly. It does it. I'm imagining production has it like on a wire to be like, okay, pull it now.
Yeah, I didn't look into how they do the hat effect because it's always a clean thing. It's got to be a wire, but how does it spin as well? Like,
I mean, it's at least funny that his main weapon, I suppose. I mean, he's also like super strong, but like
he's a weapon.
His main offensive weapon is a one-time use until you go get it again.
Yep.
Like, feels like you could just carry a gun and
no, that hat
be more effective.
Everything to him. I will say we learn that he is mute in this scene because Goldfinger introduces him saying, "This is my caddy. He is mute." And then when Goldfinger's ball gets lost in the rough and he's got 5 minutes to look for it or he's going to lose the stroke because these are standard rules. Again, they had to tell me this stuff. I don't know. I don't know the rules. Sure. I don't care. But when Odd Job puts a fake ball down, he makes a vocal noise. He's like, ah, ah. And I was like, I don't think that's what mute means. I don't think they can make any vocalization. I don't know. I
do know that like blind is varying degrees of blindness, so maybe mute could be too.
Yeah.
But
because, legally deaf, there is still sound. You just don't hear the details. Maybe he can push air through his throat to make noises, and I'll grant that. Fine, you talked me out of it again.
I mean, it's a thought. I will say I did completely miss when they finally decide to wrap up the game. He gets money from Goldfinger, and he follows him to the airport. Like, I must have turned off my brain because then they fly from wherever this is, the UK or something.
I think they're in the UK for golf.
Switzerland?
Yes.
I can't remember where.
They go to Switzerland.
I missed because it's not like focal point, but the camera does start on his car getting lifted into the plane. But they don't like unload it from the plane, but they're driving immediately. And I'm like, how did you guys got in the plane and your cars are where you landed? And I was like, that seems like a movie mistake, but...
Look, man, look, we have had 2 movies with airport scenes, and for the first time, we don't have spies waiting for Bond. There's no reason to show the airport when we land.
Right. Well, it was very confusing. I did go back over that one, and I was like, the car is getting loaded, which becomes important later. So it's like, oh, okay.
I have a bigger beef with that scene
sure.
in particular. So Bond put his big tracker in the car, in Goldfinger's car, and Q said that both of these had a range of 150 meters. But Bond has to wait a half an hour before he can get on his plane to Switzerland. There is no way he was within 150 meters at all times. I don't know. Maybe the planes were slower then, and a half an hour later you could take off and still be 150 meters away, but I don't know. That was where I had my issues. Like he would.
I feel like he puts the giant one in there.
Yeah.
And it only goes to the car. Oh, I mean, there's a lot to suspend because the car has some sort of uplink with Google Maps.
Yep.
And it can show you where
it's got
exactly everything is.
Detailed map of wherever you are.
It was amazing. I was like, oh, well, that's movie magic.
This is why I get... Well, in my defense, so in From Russia with Love, I was like, they're speaking over Wi-Fi. This is instant communication from the radio to MI6, and there was nothing in the movie to suggest that except for a hard cut. In this one, we see a detailed map of the local region. So, like, I'm allowed to believe that his camera was a real-time radio.
Oh, yeah. I definitely agree with that. This is gone, like, it's still a little grounded, but the tiny things where it's like, oh, that works now. Like, that would not work at all in 1960.
Oh, yeah. And I mean... I am still fully on board for the movie. The filmmakers, especially the director, Guy Hamilton, they wanted to make a movie that was full of action, full of sexy women, full of interesting gadgets, and wonderful places around the world. And I think they hit most of those things right on the head. And Switzerland is probably my favorite sequence in this whole movie. From the moment when Bond starts following Goldfinger, and then we meet Tilly Soames, who is going to reveal herself as Tilly Masterson later. Tilly, that's our third Bond girl. Yeah. That's the point that I'm trying to make. We think she's a baddie because she almost shot Bond. And then we get the gadget that was never discussed by Q, but Bond knows how to use it. We got those chariot spikes.
Oh, yeah. I was trying to remember what to call those because they just pop out and pop her tire. Yeah. I will say that it was a nice introduction to a character that kind of played on Bond's flaws. Like, oh, I'm not going to chase you. But wait, maybe I should have chased you because later she shoots near him, and so he chases her down or lets her pass. It was a little bit like, well, I don't know exactly where you're going, but I feel like these scenes have to happen on the road, so you're driving and she's passing you. Like, then he comes up behind her. It's a little confusing to try to remember exactly what happened other than he pops her tires and has to pick her up.
Car chase because Bond acts like he's a nobody, but we also get this idea that maybe this woman works for Goldfinger. She did take a shot at Bond after all. And so I will say to the movie's credit, and I'm fully on board for it, I really do see in Sean Connery's acting that Bond is kind of at least on his toes with this woman. He's going to play the charmer. He's going to play stupid like he does with most people where he's like, oh, I'm just out here on a drive. But he's also taking in the clues and asking the questions and doing this stuff. So I really did enjoy the whole interaction, except that he tears from the front tire to the back tire and goes through the doors with his chariot spikes. And I'm just calling it that. I don't know if it's got an actual name. But the woman,
right.
she doesn't even notice. She's just like,
oh, the tire popped.
Yeah, both these tires, they're brand new. What about the door?
Yeah, it was a little. Yeah, that's a little bit far to go because it was a very violent slashing from those tires. Like,
yeah,
and together.
She just crashes in a ditch. I'm like, dude, using a tool like that, Mad Max has taught me that car should flip 3 times and explode in a fireball.
Yeah, I also enjoy Tilly.
I love Tilly.
Do you think it took a bit to remember that she does come out as Masterson?
Yeah.
It's like, don't recall when that happens.
It's going to be
on.
her next scene. And, I have to say, I don't know how to do this in terms of plot, but I would have preferred switching places for Pussy Galore and Tilly Masterson. Like, I want Tilly Masterson to actually be a sniper working for Goldfinger, and I want her to go all the way to the end of the movie, and I want Pussy Galore to just show up in this middle section. Like, I don't care for the final Bond girl, but I love our third one. I love Tilly Masterson. Yeah. I think she's feisty. She's mysterious. And in this first introduction, we just think she's a sniper working for Goldfinger who missed her shot and is now playing coy. Like, we think 2 spies are in the car together. Like, I just love it. I think she is so much better than this movie deserved to have.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think it was like all of the Switzerland part. It is a shame that we lose her. I was not convinced that she was dead.
Because it happens fast.
Yeah, it's like that skips a bit of it, but it is like, oh, she's there to avenge her sister, and she's kind of halfway sneaks up on Bond by accident. Yeah, but she tries to take a shot, and
since we're talking about that, let's go over the part we skipped, because I want to bring it up. Before we run into Tilly again, Bond has to infiltrate Goldfinger's smelter here in Switzerland. That was what we learned in that dinner meeting, is that he's allowed to have some smelting
smelters
factories. So they're like, just go check it out, see if he's really smuggling. And it turns out he is. His cars are made of gold. Then he takes them apart, melts them down, and then he's got his gold back. I love it. I think it's a pretty ingenious little idea.
I mean, if you don't go to the front end of that and say, how is he building his cars out of gold? Where is he putting them?
I mean, I'm willing to believe that a millionaire who can buy smelting factories throughout the world could probably have a couple of garages that can throw.
I will say, later on, it felt justified. At this point, I didn't quite feel. He did say stuff about like, oh, I own the golf. The golf course place, kind of like Bruce Wayne, but it didn't feel and settle in until later on, which is my favorite part, and we'll get to that one. But it didn't feel like he was this grand world scale villain until later.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's like, well,
he's just a capitalist. He might not be paying his taxes, but this isn't a Bond scale threat so far.
Yeah, exactly.
And but if you get another chance to watch the movie, I want you to watch this scene in particular, and I want you to watch Goldfinger. I gotta really start having IMDb pulled up. This is Gert Frube. He's a German actor, and when he came on to the Bond set, his agents lied and said that he could do it, but he didn't speak a word of English.
Oh.
And in
I
this
mean,
scene in particular, his lips don't move at all.
oh yeah. I
He's just pointing at
halfway noticed
random
that.
things and walking.
That's why the audio levels were so horrible. I was like, I cannot hear a single thing this guy is saying. Hopefully it's not
Every
important.
Yeah, but every line that he said in that movie was dubbed over by another actor. I don't remember the name of that actor, but there are only a few lines that he had to learn the English for, and those are when the camera is really close on him. But for most of the movie, they pull the camera back and just tell him to speak quickly. And so he'll say the German equivalent of that line, but kind of mumbling and very fast. And that's just so that the English actor can do whatever he wants to do and they can insert it over lips moving. I never knew that until recently, and I have always thought Gert Frube looked and sounded exactly like this. Nope. He only looks like that.
Man, that's yeah. I like in this section. I recall feeling like it sounds funny, but it was like, oh, well, everything's noisy. How you'd have to dub over it, but all of his lines makes it like I did not realize that for the whole rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Like at all.
Yeah, you'll have to watch it again. I think his very first scene was in Kentucky when they're at his horse ranch. We'll get to that later. And the camera's kind of pulled back, and he's very confidently speaking German to Pussy Galore. And when he gets done talking, she kind of looks at him a little confused and then says her line. And that's just kind of the relationship that they had with Goldfinger for this movie.
Interesting.
I love it. I think it adds so much more character to the film. It's one of those ticks in the positive for this movie that I have very mixed feelings for.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's wrapping up the Switzerland part with the car chase is...
Yes, and the whole reason we get the car chase, so Bond has infiltrated and then exfiltrated. He has done his mission. He's figured out how the smuggling is happening. He knows who Goldfinger is working with. It's a Chinese agent. As far as Bond is concerned, he has done his mission. He has done spycraft. And if this were how things were to go, he would leave, be done. Goldfinger might get arrested, but Goldfinger might succeed as well. Instead, Tilly Masterson is sneaking through the woods, and since we still think she's a sniper working for Goldfinger, and Bond presumably thinks so too, he jumps her. And here's my beef with this sequence. By jumping her, they trigger an alarm. Bond was able to enter and leave, and there was never a talk about alarms or security. But once Tilly's here, there's alarms and everyone's coming after them. It's just frustrating. Like, I just wish they had shown maybe a wire.
I mean, it did feel like the wire was in the one spot where they had the rifle muzzle. Like, you're 6 feet behind that and you'd be fine.
Yep.
6 inches even. But they alarm and alert and people come chase them. We see all of the gadgets come out. I do think it is a nice...
I love it. I have
one nice
criticism, but I agree that this is a lot of fun. This is probably the best car chase we've had so far.
Yeah, definitely. I do think having fog in a forest is a really good deterrent. Like that's perfect.
I don't know if an oil slick on a dirt road makes sense.
Should have done that much. Yeah.
That's that's my only criticism with this whole chase scene is I don't get the oil slick. But at some point, Bond is going to stop the car because I guess he took a wrong turn, and he's going to suggest that Tilly should run for that brush when he gives the word. And he goes out for a gun chase and says, "Go, go, do it." And that's when Oddjob shows up with his magic hat. The hat that can cut stone. Don't forget, it cuts stone.
Yeah.
But he throws it at Tilly, and it breaks her neck.
I was not positive she was dead because I felt like her head technically should be gone.
Yes.
But
it's like, not as hard as stone.
Right. Like, okay, but then, yeah, she dies and it's like, oh. I guess I do agree.
Fast.
It would be nice if she were swapped because then she's...
I would have liked to have more time with her. I just found her to be a compelling character, and we only get her for a couple of scenes. And those scenes left a mark on me. I was like, man, she is fantastic. Why couldn't she have been our Bond girl for the whole movie? And, you know, as soon as she's killed, we pull a Dr. No, and all the fight gets taken out of Bond again. I don't know, maybe he's got flashbacks to Jamaica when a tank burned his friend, and so he's done fighting and he's captured.
Yeah.
And they let him drive his own car.
I mean, can't leave such a nice car out in the woods, I guess. But
and nobody else knows how to drive a right-hand drive car. You got to have the Brit doing it.
They're so cordial. The villains are just... I feel like that's a trait of the villains.
Yes. I love the little old lady in the guard booth.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's such a great memeable image, and we've seen so many other movies have a take on that, like the sweet little old lady who works for the baddies.
Yeah. I mean...
It's dope. It's a good thing, and I lied. There's the chase isn't done. Bond's got more fight in him. He's gonna use that ejector seat.
Get out of a jam.
Yeah, I don't love the ejector seat effect. It's a pretty good cut to the dummy. I don't know, because he also, like, the car stops as they're firing the person out, and I always think, like, if you're gonna ejector seat someone, like, you should be going full bore. Like, they should be far behind you by the time they land on the ground. But he's whatever. It's a minor thing,
minor detail.
Yeah. But Bond is back on the car chase until he is finally stopped by a mirror, and I love it. Like, I really So we are almost done with the first half of the movie that I think is the best part of the movie. And, like, this was such a good car chase. Just a couple of stinker moments. Sad that Tilly has to die, but otherwise, I'm into it. I think this is so good. All of Switzerland is fantastic.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think we're about to come up on... I think it's still in Switzerland, but it could be somewhere else.
Yeah, maybe. I think we're still in Switzerland for the super memeable scene. The most famous Sean Connery Bond scene in his history as Bond. The one that everybody's seen, everybody's imitated. It's the laser scene. Yeah!
Gonna cut him right in half.
From the painful side.
Sure. I mean, I feel like it would all be painful, but...
Yes. But if you start at the top, then they're dead. They don't get to experience all that pain. But if you start at the bottom, well, we know where the body meets.
Right. I think it's... what do you call it? I was thinking that I think I've only seen a couple of the new Bonds kind of still trap Bond in this situation. I don't know that any of them have held off from the actual physical torture, because like the brand new Casino Royale Like,
Yeah.
goes through with it.
I know exactly the scene you're talking about because that lives rent-free in my brain.
One of the Pierce Brosnan ones, I think he does, like, get in pain. This one, he's just, I mean, he's, like, threatened, like,
It's
100%. Yeah. Like, it will happen, but it doesn't actually get hurt in the end.
Yeah, I don't
Just
even think
psychologically.
his pants get singed.
Sure.
I love this effect. So the way they did it is they had a very thin piece of steel. They bought a real laser, and then they turned on all the studio lights, and you can't see it.
Oh.
So they had to animate over it, but they spent money on a real laser. It just doesn't work the way they thought it would. And so instead, they had a pre-cut section from the steel sheet. Then they put this really thin layer of oh man, what is it when you seal metal together? I can't believe I just forgot the word.
Welding?
Yes, a very thin weld on it.
Huh.
And then they smoothed it out, painted the whole thing gold, and then from underneath at a reverse angle from the laser, there's a guy with a blowtorch. And he's melting very slowly going up on the reverse end, but that creates this effect where the fire looks like it is coming out from where the laser is hitting. I love it.
It's really good.
It's so cool.
That's a great effect.
Yeah, so
I remember what the other one I liked from the other movies. I remember liking a practical effect, but now I can't remember it.
Yeah, it's going to be that way. And I really love this one. The only non-in-camera portion of it is the animated laser light because they just couldn't get the laser to show up on camera at the time. And in this, situation, Bond turns to Goldfinger and says, "Do you expect me to talk? And I'll let you do it. I'll let you say the most memed line in all of history."
Oh, no. I don't have it down, but he does say that, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die."
Oh, and I love it.
It's a great one. I think I hit all the words, but
you hit every word. Maybe not the exact same way he did, but... And that is one of those close-ups where they had to make sure he said every word in English because his lips match up with the person recording over it. And so you see it all the time to this day. If we're going to have a conversation about Bond, there is going to be that image of Goldfinger with his hands in his pockets, turning back towards Bond and saying, "No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die." Oh, it's so good. It only took us 3 movies to get an iconic line.
I mean, $2 million. What, 6? That's... Get one thing that lives forever.
Oh, man, and it lives forever. And I mean, Q had his greatest line in this movie, but I don't remember. Well, I do remember it, but it doesn't stand to the same scrutiny as Goldfinger's line. Q's most famous line was when he shows the ejector seat and Bond says, "You must be joking." And he says, "I never joke about my work, 007. That was his line that was always shown over and over again if you're talking about Q. And it's in the same movie as the most famous Bond meme of them all. Oh, like if we had stopped the movie here, if Bond died and this was a tragedy, this would be a 10 out of 10. This would be the greatest villain to ever exist. This would be the movie. But Bond wiggles his way out. He's got a bluff.
Talks his way out. Gets knocked out. Wakes up on a plane. Just in time.
Okay. I want to take a quick breather. We don't have sponsors. It's not that kind of breather. I'm going to say everything before this moment is an 8 out of 10. I love everything that we have just seen. So good. Now we're getting to the part of the movie that I don't love, and I think it just keeps getting worse and worse. It has one really good climax, and then it gets worse and worse again. Like, my final rating when we get there is going to be colored by this second half of the movie where we finally get to meet Pussy Galore. I've been saying her name because I enjoy it.
Yeah, I think it was nice to see someone be maybe about as feisty as Tilly, but still more businesslike, like villain-like.
Yeah. She's a real henchman.
Yeah. Doesn't throw hats or anything, but she'll kill you if the boss says, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I said this in the last movie. This movie has it really clear. In this movie, we've got one boss, two henchmen, or two lackeys. Sorry, I always get those wrong. And one henchman. The henchman is Oddjob. Our lackeys are Pussy Galore and a guy named Krish or Kirsch. I can never remember his name. He'll show up in this half of the movie.
Oh, right.
He's not a big deal.
No, lackey.
Ms. Galore is a much bigger deal as far as lackeys go.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Bond just cannot see her as working for Goldfinger. Like, every interaction they have, he's like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, come on.
You can't be a villain. Why? He's like,
you're too hot.
It's just misogyny. I mean, he doesn't think that they can also be villains.
Yep, 100%. He just will not believe it. This is our first Bond is the bad guy moment because he just cannot believe a woman can be capable. He doesn't even believe she's flying the plane.
She's got a whole circus of a whole bunch of pilots. Like, I don't know what you call, like, captains or commodores, like from Pirates of the Caribbean. They have multiple ships.
Yeah.
What's a pilot that has multiple pilots beneath them? I don't know. They need a name.
They need Sky Admiral or something like that. Okay. The most forgivable scene for me is the bathroom scene. They're still in the plane and Bond's like, "Ooh, can I freshen up?" And he discovers both of the ways they can peek in and watch someone in the bathroom. And so it's cute. It's fun. I'm fine with it. But he doesn't do any spy stuff. He only stops people from watching him while he shaves and showers.
Yeah. Gets ready because the villains are polite.
Yes.
I suppose.
Yeah. And then he turns on his tracker and we land in Kentucky and the CIA calls M. And we have to blame MI6 for the CIA being useless for the rest of the movie. M was the one who said, don't cramp his style. He's on top of things. Leave him alone. So Felix is going to spend the rest of the movie just watching in the background, being like, no, we can't go in yet. We don't want to cramp his style. So I will forgive Felix's uselessness, but it's still one of those things where, like, he turned on the tracker. This tracker was supposed to be turned on when you need someone to track you.
Damn, they don't help at all.
Nope.
No. I want to say, let's see. Yeah, I'm trying to think of where we are in it because he gets to the ranch. We see the pilots. Yeah. It's interesting to have them get like a saxophone intro.
Yeah, they're so getting out of the planes.
Yeah, we will never see them again. But yeah,
I mean, we'll see them flying again. But yeah,
sure.
This is their only time to speak. Their only time to be outside of a plane. Like, I don't know why they're getting this introduction.
Yeah. But once he gets to the farm and it's like, oh, you've been so polite, they toss him in a cell, and it's like, again, they're keeping him alive. For why?
Well,
like,
he gambled in the last good scene. he gambled that if he knew about Operation Grand Slam, then MI6 knows about it. So Goldfinger is like, okay, fine, I'll keep you alive for now. This was his second chance to kill Bond, and he didn't take it. But this time around, okay, fine, we'll say okay.
We're coming up on my favorite scene, though.
Is it the prison break?
No.
Okay, good. I'm glad because the prison break makes me angry.
I absolutely love that. And I think it's before the prison break. Oh, yeah, of course it is. He's talking with these, I assume, mobsters of some sort.
The mobsters.
Like, I don't care so much about them so much as he pushes a button and this room transforms. And it's like this giant console in front of one guy feels like supervillain type stuff.
It is an amazing set ruined by the mobsters. Because I agree, I love the room transformation. But to hear people in the background being like, hey, where'd that pool table go? Hey, someone get those lights. Oh, watch the door. I don't like this. Like, I just start laughing at the movie. I'm like, oh, guys, shut up. You've never seen a supervillain's lair before?
I mean, I guess not. But that's what I took away from it. It was a very nice, like, justification of, oh, so this guy's got a big plan. Mm-hmm. And he's capturing these mobsters eventually. Like, once, like, that's after the jailbreak, but I don't quite get, you got the stuff, or you just tying off loose ends? I assume that's the point.
So I watched the movie twice this week, and I don't know why he kills the mobsters. I just don't. The only thing I can think is that it's because he's the baddie and he's going to kill people. But we know he's going to kill Solo, the guy, the mobster who wants to leave the plan, because he says, I'm going to take care of this. And here we'll briefly mention Bond was in a single man cell with one door, one window, and somehow he tricks a guard into opening that door. It's so stupid. Watch it for yourself. But Bond gets to hear the whole plan. Pussy Galore captures him and takes him outside. And there is a bit of genius in this scene. Bond writes the entire plan down and puts it in his small tracker. And then he slips that tracker into Solo's jacket pocket so that when he leaves, Felix will chase him, hopefully capture him, find the plans, and the day is saved. But that's not what's going to happen at all. And so I understand the death of Solo. God, I can't wait till we do Star Wars and I get to say those exact words again.
Understand.
Yes. I just don't get the rest of the mobsters. They are in on the plan. They are like, yes, this is a good plan. Let's do it. But he gasses them. He murders them too. So that, and it's just to show that Goldfinger is a baddie.
I mean, I guess if they're talking like getting more money if they go through with it and help him, but I'm like, he doesn't want the money.
Yeah, like we will eventually learn that's not, like, this is not a bank robbery at all. But we don't know that yet. All we know is that he has promised, if you're into this and you want to go through with it, your $1 million is going to turn into $10 million. And all but one were like, hells yeah, I want $10 million. Let's go rob Fort Knox. I am in with you. But that's
I kind of enjoyed. I kind of was okay with the fact that one of them said, "No, I'm good. Give me the money that I want right now. I've done the work. Let me out of here." I almost thought that he was going to get released. Like, these villains have been so polite. Like, they flew him out here to Fort Knox. Didn't kill Bond.
I think that's my criticism with this sequence, is that all of them die. I think in a future Bond movie, if we were to have the same setup one group, someone would have lived in this parting to show that human side of the villain of being like, I am honest. I may be villainous, but I'm honest. But not Goldfinger. He's going to kill everybody. And we're jumping ahead. Bond, they see Felix and they're like, oh, well, just in case they're, with the government, let's get Bond out here. He's been in his cell that now has like 6 dudes inside of it pointing guns at him at all times.
Yeah.
It's silly. I like it. I laughed. I chuckled. I'll give it to them. But they bring him out so that he can just go take a walk with Pussy Galore. She's off duty. She's not carrying weapons. She is totally defenseless, as she tells Bond. And we get the infamous hay scene.
Yeah.
I hate
the
this
worst.
scene.
That's not consensual at all.
Yeah. Bond forces himself on Pussy Galore. And for most of this movie's history, people have looked at this scene and have said, wow, he's so charming that she stopped resisting and decided to go for it. But I will probably say, thanks to the Me Too movement, we have learned that is not consent. That is just giving up the fight.
I'm not sure we needed the movement, but it was to inform us of that, but to inform everybody of that. It's just bad from the get-go. Like, I feel like he makes her. I feel like he references it later on as to why did she help us out, and it's like, this is such a different era.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that it feels like the majority of people do not espouse these ideas, or it might, in the terms of this being a movie, these fantasies of, oh, if you're just charming enough, you'll get the girl, and it doesn't matter as long as you've charmed her well enough.
And charm is what you use for forcing yourself physically on another person until they stop resisting. It is gross. It is. So I was talking to my mother about us doing this podcast, and I mentioned we were watching the Bond movies, and she says the Bond movies really, they just objectify women. And at that point, we had only watched the first 2 movies, and I was like, well, maybe, but it's harmless. Now it has earned its reputation. Like, this is okay. Forgive the foul language, but we do learn that Bond has another superpower, and that is his super sex. But it doesn't work for me. It doesn't work in the context. It used to work when I was a kid and I didn't understand better. I thought that was how adults did it, and that is not how adults do it. Just so everybody knows, Bond's the baddie.
Yeah, it's I'm curious how to see it change, because it feels like the Daniel Craig era has semi changed that, at least in the arc heading towards the end. Because, I mean, he still starts off like that in the movie based on the first book, but it feels a little different to Bond in this one, smacking a woman on her ass as he dismisses her from the man talk, or when he what is it? I want to say he says something with Tilly that's like, "Are you kidding me?" Or with all this with Pussy Galore, I mean, your mom is right, and having not watched Bond from the beginning, I semi knew that because that's his his deal is being a bad guy.
Yeah.
Who's a spy, and we hire bad guys to be spies. And
yeah, he's the protagonist. I don't know if he's a hero. And in this movie, I mean, I'm fine with the male fantasy. I am fine with the action fantasy that looks through the male gaze. I just can't get past the rape of Pussy Galore. And it's what bad. The entire movie hinges on, because I told you about Bond's plan that he wrote down on the paper. That never makes it to Felix, because Solo gets crushed in a car crusher. It's a pretty cool little, maybe a little long in the tooth scene, but nobody really had seen a car get crushed before, so why not show me the entire process? But it's fun, it's cool, it's a brand new Cadillac getting cubed, and we as an audience are left starting Operation Grand Slam thinking the word never got out, and Bond raped a woman as his last act on Earth.
Oh my gosh. I hadn't put that together.
Yeah, like that's how we are going into Operation Grand Slam, and everything that Goldfinger told us about the plan happens. The planes go over Fort Knox, and it knocks out the soldiers. These are real soldiers, by the way.
They just hired them for.
Well, they went to Fort Knox. They asked for permission to film, and then the general essentially said, "Do what the director tells you to do." And so the director was like, "Okay, we're gonna film here, and when we blow the whistle, you guys are gonna cascade like you are passing out, like the plane is going from this direction to this direction," and it works. Some of them really ham it up, but others just drop like they died. But it's fluid and it looks good, and way to go, our soldiers.
Like these canisters, I feel like I wish someone would do the math of how much they could hold, how much they'd have to put out for this to be enough to just knock you out where you stand, flying, I don't know, 100 feet above them.
Yeah.
Because I told you earlier that it was off of the microphones that this feels like an origin story for why people are suspicious of contrails from planes.
Yes.
Like, they're obviously putting something into the air because James Bond's movie had it.
Yeah, they did it in Goldfinger. It must be real.
Exactly.
And we see that Felix was in Fort Knox, and he's one of the dead people too. Like, everybody's dead. Goldfinger's gonna win. Mm-hmm. He opens the safe with no trouble whatsoever.
It seemed like a very insecure safe. You didn't have the army there.
So everything outside of Fort Knox and the long shots of the vault are real. When we get to the close-up shots of the gate and Fort Knox, that's a set. And then when we go inside, that's completely fiction. They weren't allowed in. They don't know what it looks like. The Secretary of the Treasury wrote them a letter complimenting their imagination.
That's fun.
So I do love this climax. Like, I still have a sour taste in my mouth for the hay scene, and now I'm having fun again because this is a pretty good heist from the villain's perspective. The last movie was from Bond's perspective. Now we're watching Goldfinger do a heist, and his heist is not to steal the gold, but to explode a nuke inside of Fort Knox and irradiate the gold for 58 years, making his share of gold go up in value. It's a pretty clever plan. I really do love this plan. Yeah.
It seems like villainous, and if he didn't have the gold, the plan would still be disastrous for the country. Yeah. But he's less doing it for the chaos and more doing it for the money.
Yeah, like it's practical, but it also is. It would throw the world into chaos. Bond says it himself when he says the Chinese provided the nuke. He's like, so your gold goes up in value and China gets chaos in the West. Like that is a brilliant plan. And I absolutely agree. I didn't need the movie to tell me it was a brilliant plan for me to be like,
Sure.
oh, wow. This is a step above everything we have seen before. Like, this is
Exactly.
dope.
Yeah.
But of course, things fall apart because guess what? The army isn't dead. Felix is alive. And once they arm the nuke, that's the signal for everyone to descend. And I do want to point this out. They immediately say minimal offensive fire until we have disarmed the bomb. So I want you to remember this is minimal offensive fire for the rest of the movie.
The last second. Oh man. I remember hearing that, but then action started, so I forgot about like, oh, they should be firing less than they normally would.
Like
They're just kind
there's a
of going
dude
ham.
that tosses a grenade inside the vaults and like this is minimal fire.
Yeah. I think that arming and leaving Bond in the vault and then like stuff kicking off to get Bond trapped inside with Oddjob.
And the lackey, Krish.
Oh yeah.
He's named. That's the only reason I'm bringing him up. But he is a lackey and he has no courage. He first says he's going to disarm the bomb, and then it looks like he's running for a back door because apparently Fort Knox has a second exit, and that's the reason Oddjob has to kill him.
I suppose. I mean, I think it was nice and quick enough that it was going with like the chaos that's going on outside. It fell a bit when finally it's just Oddjob and James. I don't think there was any other noises but the fight noises and any music at all. Any sort of theme would have helped.
They went Star Wars quiet for this, but maybe not rough. To the effect that Star Wars gets when they go silent.
Yeah.
But it's a fun fight, but I do always wonder about one of Bond's weapons that he finds. He grabs a wooden club, and every time I see it, I'm like, why was that there? Who in the U.S. Army decided to put a wooden
club
beam against, like, just there on the floor?
It's good. Yeah. I don't know why they would have put it there.
Yeah, it's silly, it's dumb, but they need to have Oddjob chop something in half, and so that's the whole reason it's there. But I do love the Bond Oddjob fight. I don't want to go play by play, but suffice it to say, at one point Bond gets the magic hat. Oh, before Bond gets the magic hat, Oddjob throws it and cuts a metal wire. So it cuts stone.
Important.
It cuts wire. It breaks bone. That's what this hat does.
Doesn't cut skin.
Nope. Skin is way too hard for this hat. But yeah, Bond gets the hat. He throws it. It gets stuck on the bars. And when Oddjob goes back to get it because he needs his special hat, that's when Bond is able to electrocute him. And the reason I want to bring that up is because the actor was a Hawaiian professional wrestler. That's part of the reason he's so big. But that also means that he is willing to do it for real. And in this situation, they were like, just look like you're in pain until we call cut. And so he leans up against the bars and he's doing the pain thing. And I think he even falls. He got burned by that fire that is coming out next to the sparks, but he didn't run away from it or anything. He just continued doing it like a professional wrestler would.
Boy, that is rough.
Yeah. So I love Oddjob, but this is his death, and it's tragic because he's iconic. We might see him again. I don't know. Maybe they'll comic book him in and be like, no, he didn't die. But I don't remember seeing him in any of the other movies. I just remember him from the Nintendo 64 game.
I mean, for how memorable he is, it does feel like, man, I think he is in a different movie, but where he dies here, he shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Unless they go and change the timeline, like if one of the books comes before any of these.
Well, we will meet a later henchman who works for multiple villains, and in one of the movies it looks like he dies, but then he comes back like a movie or two later. So it's not out of the question for Oddjob to make a similar reappearance. I just don't remember if he does. If you watch when they disarm the nuke, just so you know, Goldfinger got away. Oh no. They get inside and they disarm the nuke. In the original script, they said he disarms it with 3 seconds to go. When they filmed it, they were like, nah, it's got to be 007. And so that's what it shows when he stops the timer. But the very next line is Bond talking to Felix saying 3 more ticks and Goldfinger would have had his way. 3 more ticks and it would have been 4 seconds left.
I will say I did not read the numbers. I think I remember the line, but I didn't read the numbers. That's my reviewing. I'll have to.
I only caught it the second time around this week. The first time around, I was just on a high. The movie had won me back despite itself. And then, we are told that Bond's going to go meet the president, and he gets on a plane. But oh no, it's General Goldfinger, and congratulations on your promotion. I love that line. It's another one of those iconic things. Like, maybe to me, maybe there aren't a lot of memes of Goldfinger as a general. But nobody ever notices his gold gun.
I think I did enjoy that he had a backup, like the general suit on hand for when stuff blew up at the Fort Knox. So it's nice to use that as a getaway part. I was excited that Bond got to fight the main villain, at least for a little bit. Yeah. And then the explosive decompression.
Yes.
That I think Mythbusters also busted.
Yes. Yeah, like if you're, and reality busted because Boeing had all those plane mishaps, the most famous being that a door or two came off of a plane in mid-flight, and in one of those situations, there was someone doing drink service. She didn't get sucked out of the plane. She just had to go and sit down and put a seatbelt on. Like, I think it's 8 pounds of pressure from the wind. Like, it's just a gentle push. Like, it's not really hard, but movies make us believe it's explosive.
Explosive, yeah. Like, it makes sense if you're in, like, those deep seas things, because there is so much pressure, but the airplane doesn't pressurize high enough to force you out of it, because the outside pressure is so much lighter, higher up. So he gets sucked out the window and he dies. But I was almost thinking that Bond was going to help the plane actually pull out of the dive because of... Yeah, they try. I thought, Bond's going to make it happen because he's Bond. Oh, no. They have to eject in order for the final scene to play out.
Well, and we even see on the radar, just like in real life, if someone ejects from a plane, a smaller dot leaves the big dot. I love that. I laughed so hard when I saw that. But that goes to my primary criticism of this movie. The second half, the laughs that I get from it are laughing at the movie. Like the first half, its laughs are clever. They're part of the plot and the pace, and it feels like they mesh really well. And then at some point, it's like someone hit the director on the head and he forgot how to do comedy and just made it slapstick. And they learned the wrong lesson from this, because so many Bond movies are going to attempt slapstick comedy patched into their high action film. And I just don't love it.
Yeah.
But
I think I'm remembering something like that.
Yeah. Before I ask you your ratings, I will quickly break down. We do ratings, not reviews, or not grades, rather. A grade, you put 7 as your average, and that's the middle. But that's not actually the middle. In ours, we do a rating where 1 through 10, 10 is the best, 1 is the worst, 5 is the legitimate middle. If it's an average movie, it gets an average score. So with that in mind, Justin, what did you think of this movie, and what would you give it on a scale?
If you have a title skip or scene skip, or if they had rewritten the barn, I think it could have been a lot better, because that really kills it. Like the character of Bond. Like if our ratings are for average person liking it, I mean, I would say a 6. If you could skip the scenes, it would probably be better. Yeah. Or at least in your ratings, acknowledge the fact that it's very problematic, because Bond refers to Pussy Galore helping as, I wrote it down, he must have appealed to her maternal instinct by sexually assaulting her. It's like,
that's what.
Oh my God.
That super rape was what got her to call Washington. Like, I hate that the whole movie hinges on that assault scene. Like, without that, the day is not saved. And I hate that so much. Yeah. So you're sticking with a 6?
6 could have been better if it was not so era specific.
Yeah.
If, hundreds of years had not culminated in Bond being an asshole.
Yeah. I mean, this is a movie that is colored by changes in a modern audience. And that's just going to be a reality that people have to live with. We cannot go back to the 60s and watch this from that perspective. It doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. And, if the barn scene didn't happen, this would be an 8 out of 10 movie. This has everything that you want from a Bond movie. It opens up like a flower or a really complicated folded piece of art that you unfold and more layers are exposed. And I love that about this movie. I love that we go into it with a little mini adventure. We watch Bond fail. We get essentially a red herring where we're chasing after someone that we think is a smuggler, but he's got a world-ending threat tucked under his sleeve, and everything hinges on a rape scene. Like, if the message had gotten out with his note, that might have changed my entire read on this picture. But
if he had appealed to something that used words that maybe like
anything that would make me think like, wow, Bond's a good spy. But no, he's a bad person. I know he's licensed to kill. No one is licensed to rape. That's not a thing. So I think for me, I've got to end at a 4. I wanted to give it a worse rating, but like the ending does color it. It has its ups and its downs. I'm going to give it a 4. And once again, we're back to Dr. No rating of an average of 5.
Average 5. I mean, the rating is someone watching it and enjoying it. I think for the most part, you will get a Bond movie if you're looking for a Bond movie.
Yeah. I think we're going to have much better ones to look forward to, but I do think we have now firmly set what a Bond movie is. And between From Russia with Love and Goldfinger, we now have everything. Every ingredient in the Bond recipe has now been put in the stew.
For better or worse.
Yep. The good and the bad. We've got a Bond.
I'm curious to see the slapstick come through in the other ones, because I feel like they kind of play it mostly with the gadgets or something, but we'll see when we get there.
Yeah, and it might work in other movies. I vaguely remember some of the Roger Moore movies being legitimately funny and fun to watch. But Goldfinger, I've got complicated views and feelings on it. It's worth the memes. If you want to know where these memes come from, give it a viewing for that. But just know it's not Bond's a baddie.
It has aged.
Yes.
Poorly.
Thank you. That is a much better way of saying it, and that's a much more diplomatic way of coming out of this.
Yeah.
So we are on Blue Sky. You can find us there. We're also publishing shorts on YouTube, and I did create a TikTok. I just have to run it from my personal phone. So, but and also TikTok won't show our videos to other people. So, if you want to find us on TikTok, you can help us out by, I don't know, liking one of our shorts and telling TikTok it's okay to share it with other people.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. We got some views on YouTube. I'll accept that. Yeah, so I've got an idea for an outro. Well, we'll just give it a shot. My name was Sammy.
I'm still Justin. And I was
so glad
as
that
well.
didn't change during the making of this podcast. 007 James Bond and Potato Chip Pictures will return in Thunderball.
That was so random. Oh my gosh.
Well, all the movies end by saying Bond will return, so, now I'm saying we will return.
That makes more sense of the final movie that they've done. Yeah, all right.
All right. Thank you guys for listening. Bye.